I just asked Bo to do my eulogy. Mr. President, Mr. President-elect Kim, and Mrs. Dudley-elect. January 18, 1965 was a gray and snowy day in Lexington. Young men in blazers and ties trudged through the mud in the back campus, which is now Stemmons Plaza. As a high school senior, I counted Washington and Lee that day as my 13th campus visit, because Christopher's mother and my mother was so worried I couldn't get into a college, I had to apply to 12 schools. That was big money back then at $50 an application. And it was January, and all my applications were in, and a friend said to Mom, my son's going down to Washington and Lee, he's a young alum, he wants to take John to show off his college, and I had to go. It was cold, it was forbidding. The students were terribly unhappy. They were going from one exam to another. And there I was in Lexington. Despite the weather, the pervasive foul mood influenced by the exams, and my indifference, I immediately fell in love with the school. I need not tell this gathering that this is a magical place. Then I fell in love with Washington and Lee athletics. My first stop was Dean of Admissions, James Farah Sr. Bo has been stealing my lines for years, but Jim Farah Sr. was indeed the quintessential W&L man, gentleman. You of course know that Hall of Famer Jimmy Farah is the next generation, and has become, in his old age, the institutional knowledge, the man to see about all things Washington and Lee. He also married up. I am pleased to consider Jimmy as one of my longest standing friends, and you also should know that he knocked the crap out of me in the 1971 varsity alumni football game. I put a pretty good lick on you that day too. I then visited Hall of Fame football coach Lee McLaughlin in his cubicle office, no ceilings, about this big, along with all the other team coaches in Old Doremus. 4 years earlier, Coach Mack had led the Generals to an undefeated season. Over 2 seasons, they had 1 tie and no losses, and a Sports Illustrated feature, and being declared the Washington, D.C. Touchdown Club best small college football team in the country. This was accomplished a mere 7 years after Washington and Lee gave up big-time athletics and de-emphasized. There I was. I was a 5', 10-inch, 190-pound guard. Those specifications had earlier prompted a Cornell University line coach to say to me, "Have you been sick?" That is the God's truth. And that was the end of my endeavor trying to be an Ivy League football player. Anyway, Coach Mack very politely asked me what I played and said he looked forward to seeing me next August. That 30-second exchange was the extent of my recruitment for the football team. He then said I should go meet Joe Lyles, because I had mentioned that I wanted to play baseball in college. I can't tell you how embarrassed I am to have the 2 previous baseball recipients on the same dais. I will not do Joe Lyles' story. Okay, 1. Maybe 2. He once told me, this is the God's truth, I was too slow for my own speed. And when I later coached, Joe and I drove to a coaches meeting in his beloved red Porsche. You remember it? And he said he had just gotten some new radius tires. I'm sitting about this far away from Joe. There's nobody else to cover for me. And he said, those radius tires, they give you more turns per revolution. That's a true story, too. On that January snowy day began my 55-year love affair with Washington and Lee athletics, which, as this room knows for sure, embodies all that is good about the university. As a 17-year-old, I became and remain hardwired emotionally to all things Washington and Lee, and especially athletics. I want to thank the selection committee for my being included in this year's Hall of Fame class. I am humbled to be selected and joining such greats of my era, that being the 60s and early 70s, as the undefeated 1961 football team, Buck Leslie, my head coach, Lee McLaughlin, his predecessor as head coach, who so tragically died my summer before my senior year, Bob Payne, now a federal district judge, an All-American, and my freshman football coach when he went to law school, Michael Neer, David Redmond, Sam Engelhart, Scott Feckney, and Teddy Bauer. There are many more. Sam, I am particularly pleased to represent Baltimore in the hall. We in Baltimore do more than just simply send lacrosse players. I also want to thank my family for their support. Wife Ellen, daughters Jessica, Miriam, Maui, and John Jr. This is going to reverberate for months. Jessica, would you stand up, please? Frank, where's Frank? Mariella. Would you stand up, please? You coached my daughter in tennis in 1992.
It was like a bad PE situation.
I also want to pause for a minute. Indulge me. You gave me the dais. I need a little parental pride expression. My 22-year-old Maui, who was Coach Hathorn's student goalie at your camp, gosh, I can't remember how many years ago, recently graduated Loyola University, Maryland, as a Division I All-American lacrosse goalie for their women's team. Maui, good job. John, I still love you too. I also want to thank my brother Christopher. Again, Bo has stolen something, but who at age 12 was forced to accompany my father from Bethesda, Maryland for road trips to every home game, driving from Maryland and compelled to bring his trumpet to play charge. Upon my graduation in 1969, Brother Christopher vowed he would never set foot in Lexington again. Of course, as many in this room know, Christopher is a graduate of its law school and as a world leader in privacy law among the school's most distinguished current alumni. Christopher is accompanied by his husband, Jim. Thank you for coming, Jim Ballard. I also want to acknowledge and thank my Baltimore friends for their attending, and especially Mary O'Keefe, who happens to be John Jr.'s significant friend. I have been honored to view Maryland, Washington and Lee athletics up close and personal since 1965. First as a football player, a 151 lifetime batting average catcher, assistant football coach while in law school, after playing for and then coaching with the beloved Boyd Williams, a member of the University Athletic Committee, and as trustee. I have witnessed great successes in the ODAC and nationally, and I have seen our co-ed athletics program flourish under the able leadership of Athletic Director Mike Walsh. Thank you for coming tonight, and Gene, thank you. And carried on by my good friend Jan Hathorn. To now be selected by the Washington and Lee Athletic Hall of Fame is humbling. I will be forever grateful for the honor which you have bestowed upon me. Be assured it will be cherished. Thank you.